we go. So this is the first recorded SYS101 lecture, Doc D, and this is on transformation theory, and this is in response to the COVID-19 outbreak and subsequent quarantine. And so here we go. All right, so first we're going to talk about, again, this is transformation theory. And so transformation theory really talks about how things change and how businesses, corporations, even people have to change with the times. And if you fail to change with the times, then bad things happen. So first example would be Kodak. And so Kodak is actually, everybody's probably familiar with the name, and they're the ones who actually pioneered the individual camera, and the camera for personal use. And when Kodak and photography are synonymous. And so prior to the invention of the personal camera, cameras were really expensive, and they took a lot of time to set up and a lot of processing to take the picture and then subsequently develop the picture, and so it just wasn't available to the general public. So Kodak introduced the personal camera, and so they did that, and they did it well, and they really were the primary company as far as personal cameras. All right, and so by 1970, Kodak had 90% of the market in cameras and film, and in 1975, Kodak actually invented the first digital camera. All right, and so really digital cameras didn't come into vogue until probably the late 1990s, maybe even early 2000s. And I lived this, and I don't really remember, so what they did is they developed the digital camera. They actually were the first ones to start experimenting and developing digital photography. And so, and here's where they derailed, is that they looked at their market share, and they thought that if they continued to pursue the digital camera, that they would put themselves out of business. And so they basically sat on it because they were afraid that it would be detrimental to their film business. So along that time, other companies started developing digital cameras and started selling them. And so now today, film cameras are obsolete. I mean, there are a few of them out there. There are a few purists who still use the digital camera, but by and far, they are obsolete. And so, that really put Kodak in a bad place. All right, so Swiss watches. The Swiss are known for making intricate, well-machined pieces, and for the last 400 years, since the 16th century, the Swiss were known as the best watchmakers in the world. So again, kind of the same thing kind of happened here, in that the wind-up watch, the Swiss wind-up watch, really became out of vogue. And so now there are a few people who still use wind-up watches, but I mean, again, they're an oddity. They're a special interest type thing, and essentially they're non-existent. All right, and so the Swiss watch industry collapsed, and so the Swiss actually did finally pick up on the trends and started to develop their own digital watches, and so they're back to the #1 position. But you know, it's you have to watch what the economy is doing, what the market is doing. You have to keep pace, and you have to be able to transform your company and transform your ideals to meet the new needs. And so electronic organs, you know, these things were really popular in the 60s. You know, just every church had one, just about every church, I should say. So then in the late 60s, John Chowning invented another different way of creating musical sounds called FM synthesis using electronic circuitry. And so you could literally create any sound, flutes, bells, whistles, guitars, you name it, it could be made through electrical circuitry. And also that came in a really small package. And so, you know, here we have something that was a staple in churches and even in some homes, you know, the electronic organ. And you know, they now are being replaced with electronic. All right, and so this John Chowning, he went to the American organ companies and tried to sell his shows, and nobody was interested. And so he went to Japan, and he got in contact with a company called Yamaha, and the rest is history. So, you know, this again is that this is where the American organ companies just really missed the boat. All right, so transformation theory: grow, stagnate, or die. Change is the natural order of things. And you know, one of the things to keep in mind is that, you know, people are resistant to change, and even in our own everyday life, you know, the average person, you know, when things start changing, they become uncomfortable. All right, but change is the natural order of things, whether it be living things, people, organizations, even society. And if you just look at the last few weeks, I mean, what kind of changes have been forced by the COVID-19 pandemic? And you think about how something so small could have worldwide societal change literally overnight. All right, technology, and you know, technology is changing at an ever-increasing rate, at an exponential rate. And so, you know, if you look at the start of the steam age, you know, 150, 200 years ago, and look at how technology has progressed since that time, it's growing by leaps and bounds. And so things that are only dreamt of 10 years ago are happening today. All right, so what is the purpose of transformation theory? Is understanding how things change, why things change, and being able to recognize that change is coming, and you know, acknowledging the fact that if you keep doing what you've always done, then you're going to get what you always got. And so that really seems kind of basic, but that's what it is. Is that, you know, in today's society, change is very abrupt, and it's almost it is exponential. It's not almost exponential. It's exponential, and no matter what it is, if you look at it, change is there, and we have to look at that change, and we have to try to predict how it will change, and we also need to model our businesses and our companies to transform with that change. right, systems thinking. So this is kind of a summary of what we've learned this date, observing how systems, environments, components change over time, noticing patterns and trends, emergence, and then modifying systems to adapt to changes, and even being able to forecast those changes is important, because if you can see where things are going and you can take proactive steps, you can really capitalize on change. But if you're reactive to it, it's real easy to miss the boat. So here we're going to talk about growth curves. All right, and so growth curves are divided really into three phases. Let me bring up the three phases. Yay! All right, and so this is a growth curve that we're all probably somewhat familiar with. All right, and so let me explain the three different phases that we have here. So phase one, you know, when you first drop in, and we'll just speak from your experience as a college student. So you graduate high school and then you come to college, and so what happens? You're unfamiliar with the surroundings, with the systems that you're interacting with, the people that you're interacting with, and so what you have is this downward trend, right? Because we're really kind of in a state of paralysis, and so as we gain understanding of what's going on, and we start to understand our part in how things are going, and we start to develop coping strategies to deal with the new things that we are dealing with in our lives. And so then we make this transition here to phase two, where we have gained some experience, we've developed coping mechanisms, we've transformed how we react and interact with our environment and our peers and the administration, the faculty members, and all that stuff. And so at this point, we're really starting to grow exponentially, and so we're growing in knowledge, we're growing in our case, hopefully in our belief structures, in our ability to process more information, to be organized in how we process information. And so it just keeps on going until then we get to that point where we're pretty much at the crux of what we're gaining as far as knowledge here. And so then we're transitioning then, and so we hit that senior year, and so that senior year, we're just really, it's all about culminating everything that we've learned and bringing it all together. And so here we go, and so it comes up, and then we start to have a drop off, right? Because this is all old hat. We already know what we're doing. We're very experienced in what we're doing, and so things start to drop off. Well, at that same time, so then we're starting to do our job search, and we really don't know what we're doing. Okay, we don't really, in a lot of cases, we don't know where we want to work. We don't know exactly what we're going to be doing, and so there's that bit of uncertainty in how we interact with the job market, how we search for a job and develop resumes and all that good stuff. And so we get a few interviews under our belt, and we start to gain some confidence, and lo and behold, we get that job offer. And so then we start our new job, and again, we're all right back here in this state of uncertainty. And so we get into that job, and we start to understand what's expected of us, and to develop coping strategies, new coping strategies for the new environment that we're in. And then here we are, we're learning our job experience, or we're learning our job, we're starting to do our job, and then it just continues on. And I'm going to pause this for just a second. Okay, and we're back. Alright, so here we have some other delineators between phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So phase 1, opportunities are recognized, but we really don't know how to proceed. And so we experiment and develop strategies, procedures, whatever, to try to figure out the best path forward. And so the situation is chaotic, and there's a whole lot of uncertainty. As we transition into that phase 2, we start to develop procedures, rules, guidelines to keep us on track. And so really from phase 1 to phase 2, we're defining those rules and guidelines within our own system, and then we're also looking at the surrounding environment, and we're grabbing those rules and guidelines from our environment and incorporating those into our everyday life. And so those rules are what keep us on track. And so as we go to phase 3, all right, so now we're phase 2 to phase 3, the rules and the guidelines start to change. And so we have to basically recreate that transition from phase 1 to phase 2, but we're at a higher level at this point. We've got a lot more experience under our belts. We're understanding the things that we're doing, and so we're starting to create more adequate rules that allow us to define ourselves and to define our expectations, and to develop success strategies to drive us forward. So on phase 3, different rules are required, must unencumber part of the organization and free them to experiment, fail, and recover rapidly to find the new path to success. All right. And so so now we're switching from the growth curves of you, the college student, to the organization. And so again, we have these break points that are outlined here as we transition from phase 1 to phase 2, phase 2 to phase 3. And so as an organization, we have to be anticipating these break points, and we need to be doing some experimentation so that when these break points occur, we're ready. And we already have some ideas, we already have some technology, we already have some techniques that we can implement so that we can shorten this period of uncertainty as we move on and move forward. All right. So where are you in your life? A lot of you are in your freshman and sophomore year, so you may still be in phase 1. Maybe you've transitioned to phase 2. And so this is one of those things that you should be thinking about. And so what has changed in your life from your first contact on campus, the first time that you went to class? Even in this class, you're going to see the same thing. So an example is that on our first day of class, you showed up, you had no idea. I can't tell you how many people had said in class, or actually not in class, but in our face-to-face interviews, that they didn't have any idea what systems was all about, and they were kind of excited to find out. Well, so there we are in phase 1, and so we start through our lectures, and you're kind of getting a feel for how I do my lectures, and then we had the first quiz. All right, and so the first quiz had kind of a dichotomy going on. Some people really got it, and other people not so much. And so there's that period of uncertainty. You don't know how I create my tests and how I relate the test material to the material presented. And so now in phase 2, we just did our midterm, which I really need to grade. you've got an idea how I deliver content, and you have an idea of how I structure my quizzes and tests. And so though you had hopefully developed coping strategies to address any shortcomings that you might have had. All right, and so now we can take a look at this again in the context of the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, in that, all of a sudden we have shifted from an in-person classroom-based course to an internet-based recorded video with basically, you're going to post text down below with your questions and comments and so forth. And so, we all went right back to phase one. And so, here I am. I'm trying to take content that I would normally deliver in person, and so you're all familiar with that. Probably roughly 20% of my content is delivered on the whiteboard. And so now all of a sudden I don't yet have that capability to capture whiteboard stuff with this. And so I'm in phase one here too. I'm in a period of uncertainty, not really sure how to proceed from here, so that you gain a thorough understanding of the topics at hand. And so you also are going to be shifted right back to phase one. And so, it could, and so the question remains, that did I miss the boat on this? And yes, absolutely. When this first COVID-19 thing started poking its head out, and I should have been saying, gee, how can I adapt my course? And probably even before the COVID-19, and I actually had given some thought to it, in that I would like to record my in-person lectures, so that people could, so that should I miss a lecture, I'm sick or whatever, I could actually just post that lecture up, and people could follow along with and get the full content. But I don't have that capability now, and so instead I'm developing the lectures from scratch. And so going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of uncertainty, and so we're going to do the best that we can, and I ask that you be willing to adapt and change as necessary. And I'm going to try to implement some strategies to make sure that you're getting the full content of the material, and that I'm able to answer questions that you might have, and so forth. So great timing, I guess, on this whole transformation theory with all the changes that we've had. But here we are, and so opportunity knocks. And here's my next slide. All right, so rather than being frightened by change, embrace the opportunity. And change is an opportunity, no matter what. Even when something bad happens in your life, and I've always said that if God closes one door, He will open up another, and we have to be willing to open our eyes, to look for options, and be willing to explore where we're at, and be willing to make changes to address those doors that have been opened for us. So most companies and people move too slowly to adapt, and that's true. Well, I wouldn't say most. I would say probably roughly half. And so this COVID-19 thing has really put a stress on everybody. There are a lot of people who are at home right now, and they're stressed out because they just don't know what's coming next. And but on the flip side of that, if you look through your your Facebook feed, you'll see people who are making the most of the situation. I have friends that they have increased their family time, and they're outside taking walks in nature, and they're really embracing the change, and they're making the most of it. And so that's the challenge that we have, is that when change comes, we have to be willing to embrace that change, and change is painful. Rarely is change not painful. Growth is painful. And so we have to expect that. We have to be willing to undergo a little bit of pain to transform our lives for the better. All right? Adapt faster and see if it's coming. Not only will you be okay, but you will prosper. And so, that really is the rule of the day, is that, if you can foresee the change, take proactive steps towards that change, and then when the change comes, you're already ready and you've got it. All right. And so, let's see here. All right. I'm actually going to do this homework. I may change the due date to Friday. More to come in the following days. All right. So, pick a situation where change takes place. And I think I may actually just make this directly relevant to COVID-19. Expect to see an updated assignment on this, and it is going to be in regards to COVID-19, because it's something that we have all shared, and I really want to hear some of your stories. I want to hear some inspiration about things, and so, are you taking this time to delve into Scripture? Are you growing as a family? What are you doing to take advantage of the change? All right. So you're going to outline the phases: phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And yes, I actually would like to see this in the form of a story. If you have a different method of delivery, I'm open to that. Yeah, I'm kind of excited about this. It is very, very funny that this whole lecture comes right at the crux of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent quarantine and the transition to online learning. And so, very excited about the opportunities as we progress through this. Please let me know what you think. How can I make this better? How can I reinforce your learning? How can I make assignments that address it, that will help you to grow and to learn? And so that's all I have for today, and I'm not sure where I'm at as far as time on this. I'm guessing probably about 30 minutes, which is a little short, but given that, on average I spend 20% of my time, it would be another 8 to 10 minutes of me writing on the board different things and expostulating on things. So all right, I think that this is a good start, and let me know what you think. Talk to you out.